Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. We're broadcasting on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation. Now, normally on Unlocking Your Truth, we have myself, Dr. Lesley, as well as Corey. But unfortunately, this evening, Corey is unable to join us. And so it's just me. Now, but he says hello. So if you're new to Unlocking Your Truth, let me explain. It is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. So we talk about everything under that umbrella on this show. And every week we have a discussion topic. And that discussion topic, it changes every week. And we love it when you, the viewers, write into us and make a suggestion about that as well. And that's actually what happened this evening, because this evening's topic is going to be mediumship. What is mediumship and how does it work? And so that's what we're going to talk about this evening. And so I want to just say thanks to Rick, and also thanks to Mariana for being the ones who have suggested that that's what we talk about today. So without further ado, I think I'll just go straight ahead, and that's what we will talk about. And specifically what they were asking was how to deal with grief and dealing with it by talking directly to deceased loved ones. So I think the idea was that that would perhaps make you feel a bit better about the situation. And so let's talk about that. So when somebody dies, obviously they leave their physical body. So they're leaving behind the physical nature, the physical body, and all of the things that go along with the physical world, such as time, space, duality. And even to some degree, they're not leaving behind or losing, but they are becoming more than who they were when they were the body personality, when they were the temporal self. So they're refocusing into the world of spirit. And in the world of spirit, in contrast to the physical world, there's no time, there's no space, there's simply oneness. And rather than the temporal self, the multi-dimensional self. And so because of this merging back into their greater being, they're no longer identified with their pain. If they were in pain before they died, they're no longer identified with that pain once they've passed on, or any other problems that they may have had in their physical life. So they experience themselves as spirit, and they have a wider awareness and perception than they had when they were in the physical. Now, in contrast to that, the people who are left behind in the physical world, they still are embedded in that physical world and all of those aspects. They're still in the body, they still experience time, space, duality, and all the physical limitations that come along with that. And so when their loved one passes away, they need to adjust their energy, because it's like there's something that was there that they were interacting with in a physical way, and it's been taken away. So there's an energy adjustment that takes place, getting used to that energetic absence of that person in their physical form. Although the relationship that you have never goes away, and the connection that you have as spirit and soul to soul, of course it never goes away, and the experiences that you had together in life, well, they are yours for all of eternity. Now, because the person who is still in the body, then they remember all of the circumstances of the death of their loved one. They remember all the suffering. So if there was suffering, or even if there was an accident, they have the whole memory of that and the story around that. They're still carrying that. They've not been released from it and moved away from it into a wider consciousness like the person who passed away has. And they also still have embedded in a culture beliefs, maybe some rituals around the death process and concepts around what death actually means. And so, they will be swept up in that ritual culture process that goes on. And of course, they are still experiencing themselves as the small temporal self, being limited by the physical senses. So there's a difference between the one who's passed on and moved into pure spirit and the one who's left behind. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because it kind of impacts my answer, about how to communicate with the person who has passed away. And I'm going to go on to talk about that next. Just making an adjustment. There we go. Okay. So what I was saying is, when you have someone has passed away, they're no longer in physical, and they're no longer limited by the things that they were limited by, such as what they went through before they passed away. The person who's still alive, who's grieving them, is still embedded in that physical reality. So if somebody who's still in physical wants to talk to someone who has passed on, then that person who's passed on, they always know. They always know, because their perspective is now wider. Their perspective is now multidimensional. They have a much broader band of awareness than they might have had when they were alive. We tend to still think of them as though they are exactly as they were. However, they've merged with the greater part of themselves. So this means if you, as the person left behind, feel you have some unfinished business, if you have something that you really want to say, then all you have to do is say it, and the message will absolutely get through. So really, all you have to do is close your eyes and ask to connect with this person, and think what it is that you would like to say in your mind. And they're going to pick up on it telepathically. So it's actually very, very easy for you to communicate something you want to say to somebody who's passed on. Now, for you, it might be a matter of faith, and your intellect might come in and you might doubt it. Can they really? Because you've got no proof or no evidence that they've picked up on that message. And so, and to some degree, it's a matter of faith that you accept and know that. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin. If someone in spirit wants to talk to someone in the physical, then the person in the physical doesn't always consciously know. There's a level of their consciousness that does, but this conscious aspect right here, right now in the physical body may not know. And the reason for that is the physical world can be really overwhelming. And so it drowns out the signals of non-physical, which are basically what we call, they're kind of like the psychic airwaves, their intuition, the quiet voice of spirit. And it's more subtle, perhaps, than the loud physical experience. So, sometimes what happens is that the beloved will succeed in leaving a message that can be validated in the physical. So somehow use their energy to make some kind of signal that shows up in physical reality. So for example, when my grandfather passed away, before my mum knew that he'd passed away, she made herself a cup of tea. And the tea bag burst. And so when she emptied it in the sink, the tea leaves formed the image of an angel. And she was so amazed that she was looking at this angel in the sink. And she knew it meant something really important. And she knew that it meant that her father had passed away. So she got the message. Or another example is when my father's mom, my grandmother, passed away. He was on holiday and she hung on until he got back. And when he walked in the door, he knew, and the reason he knew is that he had had advance warning in a dream. And so that was another spiritual communication. And so sometimes spiritual messages get through. In fact, I had a client today who came because he wanted to talk about his grandma passing away, and they had a photograph of her, which after her passing, suddenly an additional image appeared on the photograph. And again, it was a way of spirit getting through and sending a message to those left behind in the physical realm. So sometimes a message comes through, and it comes through loud and clear because it's of a physical nature. But other times, the loved one who's left alive in the physical body, they're left desperately wondering if their loved one is all right. Are they okay? Is there a message they have for me? Is there something I need to be concerned about on their behalf? And of course, and I see this a lot, and I really want people to understand that the loved one is always okay. They are always all right. It's more so the ones who are left behind who struggle. So the loved one has so much help, so much guidance, and is totally being looked after on the other side. It is true to say that they may experience some kind of disorientation, or even projections of consciousness that separate them from the deeper reality that they're entering into. But ultimately, they're helped with all of that, and they are always, without question, all right. So I hope that we've cleared up a number of questions already, and really I think the only one that we're left with is, well, then we here, the ones left in bodies, how can we make a connection with spirit so that, if there aren't those physical signs, that we can communicate, we can talk, we can have a conversation, we can ask them, we can sense that it's them talking to us. How can we do that? So let's talk about that as the next thing that we discuss. So let's go back to talking about the differences between body and spirit. Spirit has a super high vibration. Physical body has a low vibration. There's a vibrational gap between these two. So whether we're talking about communicating with someone who's passed away, or whether we're talking about any other kind of psychic ability, spiritual communication, we need to raise our vibration. We need to raise our vibration to get closer to that high vibrational state. And if the one on the other side is really wanting to communicate with us, then they need to lower their vibration. So we're trying to meet in the middle so this communication can happen. And so what is the very best way that you can raise your vibration? There are different ways. Actually, let's think of some. I was going to say meditation's the best way, and it is a really, really good way. But there actually are some really fast ways to do it. And one of them is, and this might be a hard thing to do when someone's passed away, but it's to be happy, to be joyous, to be excited, to be at a high vibration, to be amused. And maybe the easiest is to be amused. So if you can watch a funny movie that makes you laugh, in that moment of laughter, your vibration is elevated way up. And if you think about that, just think about times when you've done that. In those moments where you're having a good old belly laugh, you've forgotten all of your problems. They're not there in the moment that you're doing that. And what's happened is your vibration has gone up. Your vibration's gone up. So, listening to inspirational music and, anything that makes you, lifts your spirits. Some people might like dancing or going for a run and these kinds of things. But of course, the tried and true way of raising your vibration on a permanent basis, which has been practiced throughout the ages by spiritually focused people, is meditation. And remember earlier I was saying one of the reasons we don't hear our loved ones is because we're in this noisy physical place. And I don't just mean the noise as in sound, I just mean it's a sensory extravaganza. There's so much going on here. There's so much to distract us. So when we meditate, then we turn within and we tune out all of that external stuff. And there are techniques that you can learn that I teach, which will help you rise above your emotional levels and be apart from your intellectual doubts and all of those things. So meditate to tune out the noise of the physical world, relax, be receptive, and let go of effort. Quiet your mind, be above your emotions, and let go of all the other distractions. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. And welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. And tonight's edition of Unlocking Your Truth is about spiritual communication. We had some listeners who wrote in who really wanted to know, how can I communicate with my dearly departed loved ones? Because that would help me through my grieving process. And so before the break, we were talking about the difference between someone who is in a body and someone who's not in a body. And so now in this segment, we're going to really focus in on, well, okay, you're in a body and, you might have somebody that you'd really like to talk to. So how do you do it? And so there are lots of differences between body and spirit. And one of them is spirit has a super high vibration, body has a much lower vibration. So we're on completely different frequency bands. And the way to be able to tune in to the higher frequency bands is to raise your vibration, to tune out all the noise from physical reality, and to develop your psychic abilities and your intuition, because those are channels through to those higher frequency bands. Like, you can only see so much with your physical eyes, but with your clairvoyance, you can see a much wider range of energy frequency bands. And the same thing goes for the other psychic abilities as well. So I was, before the break, saying, the best way that I know, if what you want to do is communicate with a loved one and have a conversation where you are consciously aware of what they're saying to you, is, and that you can validate that they are listening to what you're saying to them, is meditate, because that tunes out the external physical distractions, and not to go into effort. Often we will try really hard. It's not going to work, because we need to operate as spirit to connect and communicate as spirit. And the one that has effort is the body, and spirit doesn't have effort. So let go of effort, relax, and be receptive. Be in a receptive mode. Quiet your mind. The mind belongs to the body. It doesn't belong to spirit. And be above your emotions, because the emotions belong to the body, not to spirit. And let go of any fear or anxiety that you might have about spiritual communication. And let go of any expectations or preconceived ideas of what it's going to be like or what they're going to say to you. And release your doubt that you can do this. So there are lots of barriers that can come up for people when they want to do this. And meditation, using especially the techniques that I teach, is going to help you have a way of letting go of all of those barriers. Now, because it can be easier said than done, I can reel off that big list and you can say, oh, that sounds easy, but really, and that's why, for some people, the way to get yourself into the place that you are receptive in this way is to do some training. And I do have a fabulous course called Unlock Your Intuition, and it helps with all of the things I just mentioned. But if you can get there on your own, then that's great. And in that state of being, you will be more receptive to the messages of spirit. Now, of course, the other option is to go and see somebody who knows how to communicate with spirit and ask them to do that for you. And so that's the other thing that I thought we would talk about today, is mediumship. Because we often refer to people who can communicate as spirit with deceased loved ones. We call them mediums, don't we? And so let's talk a little bit about mediumship. Because in one way, that's what we're talking about here. How to cultivate mediumship. The ability to talk to someone who you loved when they were alive, and now they've passed on into the spirit world. And mediumship is the process of communicating with the spirit world. So someone who's a medium is a conduit for communication with the spirit world into the physical world. They're like a kind of translator. They're a substance through which the information is traveling and being conveyed, or a vessel rather than a substance. And people often think that mediumship is a specific psychic ability, but actually it's not. It's more referring to a process that is done, a process of communicating as spirit. But how it actually works, it can be actually different for different mediums, how it's working. So if you've ever seen a medium on stage, they say things like, I'm sensing that. And they might say, well, I'm seeing a man. He's dressed in an old pair of pajama pants or something. Right? So they're saying, I'm seeing. They're seeing a visual of what the deceased person looked like. And they're watching that visual image, and the deceased person's conveying them information in visual form. That medium is using their clairvoyance, which is the ability to see as spirit, to get that information. Another medium might say, well, I'm hearing, he's saying his name is Jeffrey or something, then they're not seeing, they're hearing, and they are using their clairaudience, their ability to hear psychically, as a way of getting their information. And another one might say, well, I'm feeling, I'm getting this felt sense of somebody who had arthritis or something like that. Or somebody who was really emotionally disturbed. And so that one is using clear feeling or clairsentience. And there's actually a bit more to that I'll comment on in a moment. And then finally, they may say, well, I just know. I just instantly got this knowingness that's dropped in, and it's this. And that's claircognizance. So already you see there, I've talked about 4 different ways that the medium can be operating, 4 different channels that the information can come through from the person that has passed away. You might see your loved one, you might hear them, you might sense and feel something about them, or you might simply know. Or a combination of all of those things. Some mediums use several psychic senses simultaneously to receive their messages. And some are not actually using a psychic sense at all. So how is that possible? So oftentimes you'll get somebody who says, I think they passed away from a heart attack, and they'll be literally feeling their chest tightening, palpitations, pain down their arm, really physically in their own body. In one way, that's not a true psychic sense. What it is spirit is coming in and interfering with that person at the physical level, the physical body. So rather than coming through a psychic communication channel, they are manipulating that person's energy so that person feels the way that they felt. And which is a form of channeling in a way, and I'm going to talk about that again in a moment, and a little bit less comfortable and not as safe for the person who's doing the communication. So originally we started this episode, saying that we were talking about, well, how do you communicate with deceased loved ones? People have written in and said, I'm grieving someone who's passed away and I'd really like to communicate with them. Turn within, get really quiet within yourself. If you've got things that you want to say them in your mind. They will get through to the deceased loved one. If you want to pick up on what they are saying to you, then it can arise in your conscious awareness in different ways. So you need to really quiet yourself and quiet out all of those physical signals. And then you may get an awareness dropping in, a knowingness, a feeling, hear them speaking or see them. Okay. Now, I wanted to also just mention that I said, okay, well, mediumship isn't a specific psychic ability. And it's a process, and someone who says they're a medium can be receiving the information in many different ways. There is, however, a psychic ability called trance mediumship, and trance mediumship is the way that I do my readings. I go into an altered state of consciousness, I alter my energy frequency, and I obtain information from different frequency bands depending on who I'm talking to. Because every single one of you has a different energy frequency, and I need to connect with you where you're at. And so the trance mediumship can be used by a reader to alter their own frequency in order to tune in and help people in a very specific manner. So there is this psychic ability called transmediumship. And in one sense, we might say, well, not in one sense, absolutely, we would say that everyone is a transmedium. And the reason is this. Transmediumship is the process of channeling spirit through the body. And what most of us are here for actually is to channel our own energy through our own body and be ourselves. But to do that, we need the transmediumship to be able to even, bring the high vibration frequencies of our energy down all the way through to the physical world. So you are spirit, you have a body, you are channeling your own energy through your own body, you are a transmedium. But the level of expertise comes in when you learn how to consciously shift up and down gears with your transmediumship. And this is actually a way that you could channel the energy of a deceased loved one. In fact, I bet that you've channeled the energy of a loved one already. And so if you just think about, have you ever said or done something exactly like your mum or your dad or someone else close to you? And you went, oh, wow, I just said the exact same thing my mother always used to say to me, or I just did that exactly like, so-and-so. And they don't necessarily even need to be dead for that to happen. And what was happening was you were channeling their energy through your transmediumship unconsciously, but you were. And so that's another way in which we experience the reality of others and the energy of others. And so another way a medium might work is, and this might be an extreme example, but if you think about the old seances back in Victorian times, and, the lady doing the seance would go into this trance-like state, and then she would start speaking as though she was another person. And the idea that she is channeling that other person who's passed on, and they are speaking through her, and she is delivering the message, allowing them to take over her body. That's transmediumship. Another word we use for that, we call it channeling. And, channeling is the ability to bring an entity through your body using transmediumship. And so you're probably all familiar with examples of this if you just think about Abraham Hicks or Bashar or Ramtha or Jane Roberts and Seth, or Cryon and Lee Carroll. There are lots of examples of people channeling benevolent beings and delivering positive messages, using their transmediumship in that way. There's also the other end of the spectrum, which is, we call it possession. And that's when a non-benevolent being is permitted to come through and wreak havoc, in the channel's reality. And that's also a possibility. So a medium is a messenger, an intermediary, like the postman. They're delivering a message. Here, thank you for the message, and this is what they said. A channel is someone who leaves their body and allows the other being to come through and to talk through their space. And so, what I'd like to say to you is, can you really connect with spirit? Yes, you can. Can you really talk to one of your loved ones who's passed over? Yes, you absolutely can. And you don't ever have to worry that they don't hear you. You don't ever have to worry that your message is not getting through to them. But if you would really, really, really like to hear their messages, then my biggest, which is what people said they wanted me to talk about tonight, my biggest thing is to cultivate that. Because it's like anything that if you want to get your body fit, you join the gym, you go to the gym and you work out. If you don't go to the gym and you don't exercise, then it's not going to happen. Developing your psychic abilities and communicating with spirit is like that. If you meditate every day, if you turn within every day, if you do all those other things that I talked about, letting go of all of the distractions and all of the noise of the physical world, and heal yourself so that your energy field is not full of, it's like your energy field can be like a foggy filter that you can't look through as well. And so I feel developing your psychic abilities it's a twofold path. Heal yourself and know yourself, in order to really develop your psychic abilities. It's not just about the psychic abilities, it's about the healing, the personal healing and raising of vibration as well. So I hope you have enjoyed this information. And I'm going to go to another break on the radio show now. You're listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. Tonight we've been talking about mediumship, specifically how to communicate with deceased loved ones, because some of the listeners really wanted to know about that. In fact, I know we've had a lot of listeners lately who want to communicate with their deceased pets as well. And so this is relevant to you. So I'll be back soon. We're just going to take a short break for some advertisements. Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley. And tonight's topic is communicating with deceased loved ones. And so that's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about the perspective of being the person who's passed on and how they're able to communicate with us. We've been talking about our perspective left in the physical body and how we are able to communicate with them. And we've been talking about the psychic abilities, and we've been talking about mediumship and all of those really great things. And I've got some fantastic questions from our listeners who are watching live streaming on Facebook. And by the way, if you're listening on air or you're listening to the podcast, it's a really great idea to join the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group. Because if you join the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group, then you get to watch us live as we record the show. And you actually we're just starting to be delivering this material a week ahead of time to the Facebook group members. Okay, so now to the questions. Oh, I see there's another one. So I have one of the questions was, is a way to develop mediumship to open all your chakras? And I love that question because it gives me the opportunity to address something which I feel is a really common myth. People on a spiritual path have been led to believe that what they need to do is open all of their chakras all wide open, and the wider open they all are, then the more psychic they will be, the more connected they will be. And I would say the more you clear and clean your chakras, then the more your psychic abilities will become clear to you. But cleaning them, healing them, is not the same as opening them. And so to me, spiritual mastery is, yes, it's about managing your energy, balancing your energy, keeping your energy field clear, but it's also about knowing exactly what you get when you open your chakras. And so opening and closing the chakra system, which you can do in different configurations, by the way. You could open them all up, you could bring them all in, you could open some up, close some down, you name it. Whenever you do any of those things, you end up with a different experience of consciousness. And so when it comes to opening or closing your chakras, what experience do you want to have? You know, What experience do you want to have? Do you want to be in your power? Open up your third chakra. Do you want to be really accessing information from other realities that are not relevant to this reality? Open your crown chakra really wide. You can connect with all sorts of information that way, but it might not all be relevant to right here, right now. And so, communicators spirit, then, you want to tune down the ones that relate more to the physical and open up the ones perhaps that relate more to the spiritual. But different chakras channel different psychic abilities as well. And so, do you want all guns blazing and all signals coming in, or do you just want to focus on different aspects? So it's a myth that we need to just open all our chakras really wide. It's more about understanding and spirit know thyself, deeply knowing your energy system and your energy field, and what happens if you do open this one or close this one, or whatever it is. So thank you for asking that question, Letitia. I had a question from Jess who said, how do you prevent possession? The simple answer is by owning your space. So you have a body, you have an energy field, right? And this energy field, let's think of it like a little energy bubble all around you. That's your personal, private, creative universe, and you're the god of that universe. This is your world for creating and in this reality. And so if you own it and you occupy it and you're in charge of it, then you're not going to get possessed, because this sphere of energy in this physical body, it's meant to have your energy in it. However, if you don't own it, if you're not present because you're in the past, you're in the future, you're traveling out of the body, you're ungrounded, you've filled it up with all sorts of other stuff apart from your own energy, then you're leaving the doors wide open for other things to come in. So the basic principle is, the more you own your energetic space and the more in charge of it you are, then the less likely that you are to become possessed. And then, of course, a longer answer would be to say that there are many techniques that you can learn. There are the techniques that I teach in all my courses. They're the ancient mysteries, and they teach you how to consciously operate a spirit through a body and how to be in charge. So how to prevent possession is own your space. And there are all sorts of techniques that you can use to protect your space, but the basic principle is occupy your space. And then we've got a question from Abdu, who says, what is after enlightenment? And so, very cool question. And I might almost want to say, well, what's your definition of enlightenment? But what I want to say in answer to that question is, we're eternal beings and we're constantly expanding. So we never stop expanding and we never stop evolving. So we never reach an ultimate pinnacle, ever. There's always more beyond where we get to. As long as we're in a body, we are constantly learning as well, And so for even the spiritual masters who we might have called enlightened, while they're in a body, they're still in the physical world. They're still in that balancing act of duality. The difference is they know how to tread in that duality without getting far off this way or the other way, which is what most people, end up doing. And so I would just say, what's after enlightenment? We could say the next level of enlightenment, though we don't want to use the word level. Constant expansion, constant growth, new experiences. So one might say, well, there are other experiences beyond earth plane reality. There are other dimensions. There's infinite choice of what's after enlightenment, and what you choose, I guess it's going to be down to you. So thank you for that question. And then somebody, I think it was Letitia, asked, Does it take years and years to get a handle on mediumship? That's a good question as well. And again, the answer to that is really, it's like someone who asks the question, how long is a piece of string? As long as it is, takes as long as it does. And to some degree, it depends on the individual as well, because everybody is different. But I would say, if that was what somebody wanted to do, I feel like I could probably help anybody in a matter of months to be having experiences of that beyond what they were having before they started. And so, does it have to take years? No, but it could. Like, for example, I read, and this is maybe not exactly the same thing, but I read, for example, Esther Hicks decided she wanted to channel. She meditated for a year before it actually happened. The first little inklings of something coming through. So everybody's different. But I think if you have a good teacher who's got some really excellent techniques, that can really teach you to drive your car, to be as spirit in the physical vehicle and how to get it all functioning and all working, then it can be fast. So I'm going to see what other questions we have in the few remaining minutes. If a person was only 18 months old when they passed, are they able to communicate in a way that we could understand? That's a good question. So again, we need to change how we look at that baby. To us, it's a baby. It's a baby that is unable to talk. It's a toddler. When that toddler passes on, that toddler merges with the greater being that they are, the multidimensional consciousness that they are. They may be an old soul that's had many, many lifetimes on this earth. And so once they've passed away, you're not just dealing with the consciousness of the soul that was the baby. You're dealing with a greater consciousness than was the baby. And don't forget, spiritual communication is not limited by language. We talk in language. We think in thoughts, right? We look at babies and we go, gosh, they can't do that yet. And then when they're about 2, they can do that. But that's not how we communicate as spirit. We communicate as spirit through the psychic senses, right? Through pictures, through energy frequencies, through vibrations. And so that baby was always able to do that. And when that baby goes back into spirit, it merges with the greater part of themselves. And those other ways of communicating are how they communicate, telepathically, through energy, through pictures. So that would be my answer to that. And thank you for that question. It's a really, really good question. I've got a question from Shalonda. How to set boundaries with spirits, how to create space. I've always had an open channel, like a full-time job that I love, yet still need little breaks. Okay, that's a big question. I would say, from the way you asked the question, that it's possible that you're not owning your own space, and it's possible that you're allowing them into your space. So if you go back to what I was saying before, you need to have your energy in your space. And then because some mediums, that's how they get their information. Someone else comes in, oh, it feels like this is what they're saying. Whereas you can own your space and use your psychic abilities to get the information without that being ever entering your personal space. And I would also say, if it does, it's being disrespectful. And so learning how to own your space and how to communicate in a way that doesn't leave you open to that. But if you for some reason want to, then cleaning yourself out properly afterwards, having a meditation regime, like a personal energy hygiene regime before and after, would be a really good idea. Okay, we've got, I think, one more question, which is Alice in Wonderland. How long is forever? Oh no, it's not a question, this is a statement. Alice in Wonderland. How long is forever? White Rabbit. Sometimes just a second. And that's very, very cool. That's one of my favorite books of all time, actually. And it's right, because what is time? What is a second? We're eternal beings. We're infinite beings. As spirit, there's no time, there's no space. Time and space is just a construct that we've created to embed ourselves into this reality and have some particular kinds of experiences. All right, well, it's been a wonderful show, and I want to thank everybody who came onto Facebook Live. We're hoping to live stream now every Tuesday at 7 on Facebook, and then we're going to be sending the show in to be aired on the radio show after that. So that means anyone who's listening now on the podcast or the radio show, if you want to catch the information a week early, join the Facebook group. It's called the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group. So you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley, and we're here every Tuesday night from 7 to 8 Pacific time, and we broadcast on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. You can also find the questions that were asked during this show at the website on our free card reading podcast page, where you'll find a full list of them. Come back again.